Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Troy Love. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I live in Yuma, Arizona. And that is, for those of you who don't know, it's the bottom of the state right next to California. So I joke sometimes that I can be in 2 states and 2 countries in 15 minutes. And right now the weather's been great. During the summer, it's super hot, but it's been beautiful, especially in the morning. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. I'm going to share some more concepts that come from my Finding Peace workbook, which is available. You can buy that on Amazon. Lots of therapists that I know use this tool, especially in sex addiction recovery and for the partners with trauma recovery. So I know a lot of people who've used that, and they find it to be helpful. So today we're going to be talking about shame in particular. And shame is this feeling that all of us experience where we begin to feel, I should look at the camera, where we begin to feel this sense of unworthiness. And it's like this, Brene Brown calls it the master emotion. It's, I sometimes refer to it as the fifth core emotion. We have anger, fear, sadness, and joy, and we also have shame. And the way that I describe shame is it's like this fog, this feeling of fog that just heavy settles down, like gets into the nooks and crannies of our life and just hovers there, pushes us down, and conveys to us that we are unworthy of love and belonging. And Brene Brown, in her research in shame, says that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we're flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. And that really is the message that shame sends to us. So when we are experiencing a wound, one of those attachment wounds, loss, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, abuse, we already have written on our heart those negative core messages that say that I'm unworthy, there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, there's nothing I can do, those genres that we've talked about in previous webinars. And then if we don't work through and figure out how to challenge those core beliefs, then we end up feeling feelings like anger, sadness, and fear. But we have a culture in our life, various cultures that say we're not allowed to feel those, especially at work. We're not allowed to share those. We're not allowed to express those. And so if we don't have a place to be able to talk about these negative core beliefs and the emotions that are associated with that, then what will happen is shame will come in and it will wrap itself around all of that and try to shut it down. It will try to say, nope, we can't talk about this. We can't talk about our behaviors. We can't talk about our feelings. We can't do any of that because I'm unworthy of being able to have anybody listen to me. I'm unworthy of having anybody show up in my life. And therefore, it really separates us from the ability to connect with other people. Renee has 3 rules about shame. Rule number 1 is we all have it. Shame is universal. It's one of the most primitive human emotions that we experience. And the only people who don't experience shame lack the capacity for empathy or human connection. And so I joke sometimes, I tell people, okay, you can choose to be a sociopath or you can choose to admit that you have shame. That was really, you got 2 choices there. And most people are like, I guess I'm going to choose to admit that I have shame. So that's rule number 1, is that we all have it. Rule number 2 is that we're all afraid to talk about shame. We don't want to talk about shame. We don't want anyone to know that we're feeling shame. And rule number 3 is that the less we talk about shame, the more it hijacks our life, the more control that it has over our lives. So if we really want to master shame, if we want to develop resiliency about shame, we have to be able to be willing to talk about it. It's helpful, I think, for some people to understand the difference between shame and guilt because those, a lot of people like intermingle those two. with each other. And especially when we're looking at recovery, it's really important to be able to distinguish between those two concepts, those two emotions. Shame is this feeling that says, I am a mistake, I am wrong, I am bad, I suck, I'm a horrible person, because I've made all these mistakes, or just because I'm horrible. And guilt is different. Guilt is a feeling, and Brene Brown and others have identified that guilt is actually a healthy emotion. It's an emotion that says, man, I feel really bad for what I did. I feel compassion and sadness for the pain that I've caused other people because of the choices that I've made, but I know that I'm not a bad person. I made mistakes, but I know that I'm not inherently bad. I did something wrong, and I can see that that affected you, and I feel guilty about that. And I wish that I could do something to repair that damage, because I don't want you to suffer, but I know that I'm not inherently a bad person. I feel bad for what I did. It's this feeling of, man, I hope you can forgive me. So guilt is a really healthy emotion for us to have, because it helps perpetuate a desire to become better. It helps perpetuate a desire to repair damage in relationships that we've made, or it helps us be able to want to make amends. If we use the 12-step model, we really want to make amends, and guilt leads us to do that. But shame does the complete opposite. Shame like shuts us down. I'm bad, no one's ever going to forgive me, I'm just horrible, it's never going to get any better, it's just going to be awful. That's what shame does, and that disconnects us. Brene identified in her TED Talk in 2010 that shame unravels connection faster than anything else, and it's because it's conveying this message that says, there's something wrong with me. I can't I can't get any better. Y'all are going to hate me forever. Life is going to be horrible. We already went through that. Okay. There's another emotion that sometimes people become confused about, and that's embarrassment. And embarrassment is a feeling that we've done something silly, or we've done something that we're probably not the only person in the world that's ever done that. We came out and our zipper was unzipped, and now we're standing in front of a bunch of people, or we come out. One time, I went to the gym and I kind of got sidetracked, and I forgot to comb my hair, and so I went to supervision at another agency, and I sat there for 3 hours talking to these people, providing feedback, doing supervision with them. And I got in my car afterwards to drive back to my office, and I looked in the mirror and my hair was like, whoa, like that. I called somebody and said, what in the world? Why didn't you tell me that my hair was messed up? And she goes, oh, I thought that was like your new style. I'm like, no, no, that's not my new style. I was so embarrassed. The difference between embarrassment and shame is that I didn't then beat up myself for the rest of the day and say, oh my gosh, I'm a freaking loser. I can't even comb my hair. Like, what's wrong with me? I just laughed and realized I'm not the only person who's probably ever gone to work and forgot to comb their hair, or put two different color shoes on, or whatever. I'm probably not the only person. So you can laugh about it later, and that's kind of how you know the difference between embarrassment and shame, is that there's some humor there. And then another emotion that people really confuse shame with is humiliation. And humiliation is a feeling that comes from a sense of, I know that I have worth and that I am valuable, and you are trying to shame me. You're trying to make me feel less than, but I'm not going to accept that. And so I feel humiliated. I feel like you are trying to put that on me, and I'm not willing to accept that. Shame is, I am horrible, I'm bad. Humiliation is when someone's trying to shame me, but I don't have to accept that. So one of the examples that Brene uses in one of her TED Talks is that the teacher stands up and says, okay, Susie did not write her name on the paper. what's wrong with Susie? Like, she doesn't seem to follow directions. Like, how horrible is she? If Susie is dealing with shame, she's just going to internalize that and say, yep, see, here's another evidence that I am unworthy of love and belonging. I can't even get my name right. Like, I am a horrible person. If Susie is dealing with humiliation, she's going to go home and she's going to tell her mom, can you believe what the teacher did? Like, she was trying to make me feel bad, and that's not right. And it's pointed out that shame really pulls us and makes us be quiet, and we lose our voice in that place of shame versus humiliation. We're like, no, that's not okay. I'm not going to stand for that. So those are the 4 different emotions that often get confused with each other, and sometimes people interchange with each other. But shame is what we're really going to be talking about today, and how that really impacts our ability to heal those wounds of abandonment, loss, rejection, betrayal, those attachment wounds that we have, because shame tells us that we're horrible and we have to do this all by ourselves. So, any questions about that before I move on? Is there anything that anyone wants to say? Okay. All right. Just want to pull up if there's, there we go. All right. So one of the things that, there's a chat too.
Just an affirmation. Great job thus far,
Okay.
Troy.
Thanks.
Before you go on, I was thinking about, because I think humiliation and embarrassment can also get confused with each other too. So I
Yeah.
really appreciated your, you're talking about, you can kind of laugh at it. I was, and this happened, decades ago, but I went cross country skiing. I was in Michigan where there's white stuff called snow. And I didn't have waterproof mascara on. And I'm talking to all these people. I get in the car and I look like a raccoon, like the big, and I remember thinking, and same thing, nobody said anything. Nobody said, hey, you should, so it's just kind of like, but that was the first thing I thought of was that, and I laugh about it now. And there's lots of things, like tripping over a stair or whatever, like, but the ability to laugh over it, the humiliation, I had an incident that happened a few months ago and somebody said, oh, you must have been so humiliated. And I said, no, I wasn't. I knew that what they were trying to do was wrong, and that was about them, not me. So I was appreciative that I didn't take on the shame or the humiliation of it. But even the embarrassment is more self, and humiliation is more pushed on. That's that was a good clarification.
Awesome. Thank you. So I don't know if you're familiar with Don Miguel Ruiz. He wrote the book, The Four Agreements, which is a beautiful little book, and it's relatively short. So a lot of people like reading short books. I was introduced to him, and then I was also introduced to a life coach by the name of Gary Van Warmerdam. And in listening to his, he had an audio series, and this was like probably 10 years ago. He expounded on the concept that Don Miguel talks about in his books about the judge. And the judge is this voice in our head that is super critical and has this gigantic rule book that has thousands of rules about the way that life is supposed to be. And ironically, the rules don't necessarily match. Like, they don't sync up with each other. So there's a rule about what you're supposed to look like in front of people, and then there's a rule that doesn't match that about what you're supposed to look like in front of people. And so the judge demands perfection and is always telling you how much you are not perfect. And so what he's done is he's personified the first what I call shadows of shame. And I introduce the judge first because most people can connect with that. What I've done through their through taking their ideas, I guess, and running with it, is been able to take shame and personify it into 6 different characters, 6 different entities. And each one of them has a different voice. Each one of them has a different message. And what I've found to be powerful about that is that once I've been able to recognize and name them, I now have more resilience over them. I'm able to recognize what it is that they're doing and how they are interacting with me, and I'm able to understand why they're there. And so I'm going to introduce them to you, and then I'm going to give you some strategies about what you can do with them. And the first one is the judge, and that is that inner critic voice. It's this voice that tells you that you're not enough, that you are never going to be enough, and challenges you on pretty much everything that you do. Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. You need to try harder. Why are you wearing that today? You need to. People are going to think this about you. Like there's just this internal judge that's always saying that you're not perfect enough. And it demands perfection, and the connotation is that one day when you reach perfection, then everything will be great. Life will be wonderful, and no bad things will ever happen to you anymore. And so I want you to just be perfect. And so I'm going to point out every flaw. I'm going to point out every mistake that you make, and I'm just going to ram it into your head and just tell you how awful you are, hoping that you'll get the clue and then you'll work harder and then you'll become perfect. Any questions about the judge? Okay. So here's an activity that I do with people. I want you to, you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed, but I want you to imagine that you are an audio engineer and you're in a sound studio and you're the person who's sitting behind the computer and you're listening. And there's somebody who's in the other room who's the recording artist, and they are going to be talking, but you can't see them. You can only hear them. And so you're in this room and you got your headphones on, and all of a sudden you hear the voice, and it's the judge who's talking to you. And I want you to just listen for some of the things that the judge says to you on a regular basis. What are some of the messages of imperfection and that the judge is telling you that you hear all the time? You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're not pretty, you're not capable, you're not competent, you should try harder, whatever those happen to be. And I want you to just listen for it, and then I will oftentimes have people write those down. Like, what are some of the things that you're hearing the judge say? The other part then that I want you to listen for is, what does the judge sound like? What's the quality of the voice? Is it a loud voice? Is it a soft voice? Is it a female voice? Is it a male voice? Is it a deep voice? Does it remind you of somebody from your past? But just trying to hear what this voice sounds like as you're listening to it on this with these headphones, and trying to understand, okay, this is what this voice sounds like. And so then I have you write that down and just do some journaling about that. What does that voice sound like? Then I want you to imagine that yes, I probably could, how someone's asking how we could send slides. We can talk about that, but I'm sure we can figure that out. So then I want you to imagine that then the judge comes out of the room and into the room where you are, and walks into the room. I want you to see what the judge looks like. Now that you've heard it and you've heard the messages, what does the judge look like? And for a lot of people, that's a very interesting experience for them. Sometimes it looks like a person, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it looks like, I've had one person describe a dragon. Whatever it looks like, and I try not to put any images in your head because I want you to figure this out. But all of a sudden you see what the judge looks like, and you've heard what the judge looks like. So now you have an idea of, oh, this is the judge. And then we begin to take a look at, okay, when does the judge show up for you? And whenever I ask that question, inevitably the people are like, the judge is always there. Like the judge has never left. I didn't recognize that that's what it was, but my gosh, the judge like follows me around everywhere I go, wherever I go to work, when I'm having conversations with my family. There's the judge, just like talking to me all the time, just talking, 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 talking. I'm like, yep, that's the judge, and we're going to figure out some strategies to help you deal with that. But I want you to recognize just how um, much that judge has actually been a part of your life and the effect that the judge has in keeping you from being authentic, real, connecting with your loved ones, showing up at work, how much that judge has really impacted your ability to be honest and true and all that stuff. So um, it's a really powerful activity that I do oftentimes with people. The second shadow of shame is called the impotent one. And the impotent one conveys a message that you are powerless. There's nothing that you can do. Life is never going to get any better. I don't know why you even try. You are always going to be an addict. Your relationship is always going to be horrible. Your spouse is never going to get any better. You are just pitiful, and you just need to realize that life sucks and just accept that, and then you can just stop having any expectations. So it's really interesting because the judge is like, you need to try harder. You need to try harder. Like, you need to do better. And then the impotent one is almost telling you a completely different story of like, well, I don't know why you bother. It's never going to get any better. I don't know even why you try. Just stop. Stop. And so they almost tag team on us, and like judges beating me up because I'm not perfect enough, and then the impotent one tells me I'm never going to be perfect. So those two can really play a role in that sense of shame. The third one is the politician. And if you think about in real life, a politician, they want to look really fancy and they want people to vote for them. When the shadow of shame, the politician shows up, the politician is saying you need to be seen as somebody. Not that you really are that person. You just need to put on an image, a mask that makes people believe that you are somebody. You need to be seen as competent. You need to be seen as like putting everything together. So don't let anyone see your flaws. Don't let anyone see that you have struggles. You need to be seen as this amazing person. And so, and the motive is so that people will like you. So people will appreciate you, people will honor you, people will accept you. That's what the politician is doing. So the politician is like, don't let anyone see your flaws. So we got the judge who's saying, well, you suck, you're not perfect. And then the politician's like, yeah, but don't let anyone know. Just can't let anyone know that that's a thing. So the politician really can impair our ability to be honest and real, especially when we're trying to have honest conversations with our loved ones. That's where the secrets really come into play. The judge is saying you're a horrible person, and then the politician is like, but don't tell anybody. It's going to be bad. They're going to hate you. You're going to lose votes. You're going to lose support if you are honest and real. So just don't say anything. The next one is the martyr, and it's almost like if the politician and the impotent one had a baby, that would be the martyr. And the martyr basically is saying your needs don't matter. Your needs are not important. You are not important. You really don't have any value. But as long as you can make somebody else's life happy, then at least you found some purpose in your life. Like, your needs don't matter. Other people's needs matter more than yours. And so the martyr can also kind of have that voice of, well, don't they see how much you've done for them? Like, don't you see how hard you've worked? But the connotation is that you really don't matter and that everybody else matters more than you do. And so we can often step into that phase of, I'm going to not express my needs. I'm not going to share with you what I need, but I'm really going to work hard to try and make sure that all your needs are met. And there's this sense of bitterness that goes along with that, and resentment underneath that. The next one is the rebel. And the rebel is really the voice of the addict. It's the addict self. That's the voice that says, you know what? Who cares? Yeah, you're not worthy of love and belonging. You suck. You're horrible, but just go do what you want. Like, just go, sleep with whoever you want, do whatever drugs you want, like, go eat 10,000 calories today. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's going to have any effect on anybody else's life. It doesn't matter that it's going to hurt somebody else. As long as it makes you happy, then you should just go do that. Just worry about yourself for a while. So it's some people are like, well, how is that shame? Well, it's very much a sense of um, me focused. It's all about me, and it disconnects me from other people, and that's what shame does. It disconnects me from the people that I love. And so the rebel really does a really good job of doing that. So I listen to the rebel, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go act out for a while. And then afterwards, who shows up? The judge. Like, why did you do that? What were you thinking? You're a horrible person. Like, and so it's always this battle going on inside. And then the last is different than the other five, and it's the royal. And the reason why it's different is that the other five have this connotation that you are worse than everybody else, that there's something wrong with you. The royal tells you that you are better than everybody else. And that seems like, why would that be shameful? But again, it separates you. So what happens is that the other five like put me below everybody else. And if I'm below everybody else, I can't connect with them because I'm below them. The royal puts me above everybody else and tells me that I'm entitled, that I deserve, that I need to have. Don't you know how amazing I am? Kind of a message. But in that process, it also disconnects me from other people because now I think that I'm better than everybody else. And it is a shame tactic because really the truth is that I am of equal value as everybody else. I matter like you matter. I'm important like you're important. The, the, the other five shadows of shame try to convince me that I'm not, and the royal tries to convince me that I'm better, but the consequence is that I am completely disconnected and isolated from everybody else. And in that process, my wounds of rejection, abandonment, betrayal, whatever those wounds are, they are not being healed. They are not being taken care of. I'm not doing any wound care around any of that because the way we heal that is through connection, through love, attention, presence, kindness, and all of that. And I can't get that met if I think that I'm better than everybody else. And I can't get that met if I think that I'm worse than everybody else either. So any questions about those shadows of shame?
So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that there are probably some of them that, like perhaps one of them that I spend more time in. That's but I can see the juxtaposition where you're going back and forth between them. Now there may be some that there may be some that don't really fit or
Right. They don't show up that often.
yeah, and the other thing I thought is, it may be situational or with certain people. It might be in this situation, I'm more, I don't know, the politician because I want to have that veneer of, you need to like me. But in, another situation where I feel one up, I may be acting like a royal,
Yeah.
But like you said too, all five of the, the first ones, you're in a one down position. With a royal, you're in a one up position, but we're never in a peer
Right.
or moving forward together position. There's always that power differential, on any of those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I introduce them, a lot of people say, I don't think I have a royal. And because it usually comes out very situationally. Or as people would say, I don't know if I have a martyr. But then as we begin to explore, like, oh, there it is. And they don't always. The judge is usually out for most people. The impotent one is usually out for people. If you're struggling with an addiction, the rebel is out a lot. So we kind of look at, okay, who comes out the most? Let's figure out what we can do with them, how we can deal with them. Um, and let's develop some strategies for them. And what I've noticed is that when I've started to work on developing some resilience about some of them, then I start to recognize the others who have showed up, and they're a little bit more subtle. They're not as loud and obnoxious and in my face like the judge is, but they're there, and they're whispering their little things, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see you before, but there you are. So
Yeah, with a politician, I was thinking, like I want you to see this veneer, as I wrote down, it's a veneer of, what I want you to see, but that still is going to be, it will be part of the, if they really knew me, they wouldn't like me, so
right.
I'm still being separated because I'm not showing my true self and letting anybody, I'm not being vulnerable so that people can like me or not based on who I really am.
Right. Yeah. So we want to be able to develop some awareness of those shadows of shame, and then we want to be able to develop some strategies of how to deal with them. So part of what I help people try to understand is immediately when I introduce the shadows of shame, they're like, "Well, how do I get rid of them? Like, I don't want them in my life. Like, they're awful." And unfortunately, there's shame. And like the first rule that Brene Brown says is that everybody has shame. So we don't actually get rid of them. Um, they they were they are from, I guess, from a Freudian perspective, they are defense mechanisms that have been around as ways of helping us cope with pain since we were a little kid. Usually the judge starts to show up in our lives when we're about 8 years old, and we've been able to start to identify choices and consequences. We've been able to identify right from wrong. That's usually when the judge shows up, because the judge teaches us, hey, if you want your parents to be happy, then you need to clean your room. Or if you want your teacher to be happy with you, then you need to turn in your homework and do a nice job. And then you get a little smiley face on the top. You get a little star that says, hey, I'm okay. And so the judge showed up at that time saying, hey, if you want love and attention, try harder and you'll get it. So at that time, it was part of our developmental process of learning how we do that. It's the challenge is that we've grown up now. And the judges continue to say, well, if you need love, if you need attention, you need to work harder. And so if we can take a look at these shadows of shame are not bad, they just are. They exist, and they provide a purpose for us. And if we can recognize them, we can say, hey, oh, I can see what you're doing. I can see why you're here, and I'm going to try something different. So we have the wounds of rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and they hurt. And then because of that, we have these negative messages that have been tattooed on our hearts that say there's something wrong with me, or my world is not safe, or I'm powerless. And then we have the emotions that come up, the anger, fear, sadness, joy, whatever are associated with those. And we go back and forth between those, but then the shadows of shame are going to show up and say, well, I'm going to try and help you with that because you've been hurting. You've been hurting. So let me help you. So when I recognize, at least for me, that when the judge has showed up, I'm able to say, okay, why are you here? You're trying to perfect me. You're pointing out something I did that made a mistake. What are you trying to accomplish? And I actually imagine having a dialogue with the shadow, the judge. And the judge will say, well, um, you made a mistake, and people are going to hate you. Um, People are going to talk badly about you behind your back. And then I'm able to sit that with that and say, oh, so what you're trying to say to me is that you care about me and you don't want me to be hurt. You don't want me to feel rejected. And so you believe that if I don't make any more mistakes, then I won't be hurt anymore. And the judge will say, yeah, that's what I want. And I can say, well, thank you for caring about me so much. Your way doesn't work very well because number one, it's not very realistic. Um, I'm actually going to call up a friend and share with them the mistake that I made. And then I'm going to ask, hey, do you think I'm horrible? And they're going to say, no, I mean, I made that mistake too. I can relate to that. And then all of a sudden the shame like goes away. And I got what I needed, which was some acceptance. And the moment that I get what I need, guess who actually does go away? The shadows of shame. Like they leave. They don't have a job to do anymore. Their whole presence has been that I'm trying to help you get your need met in a really unhealthy way. So I'm really trying to help you get your need met in an unhealthy way. And so when I'm able to recognize, well, hey, that's not working, let me figure out another way to be able to deal with that. It's more effective, and I actually get my need met, and then my shadows go away.
There's a comment. Sometimes when I recognize I'm feeling shame, anger, jealousy, etc., I like to acknowledge the emotion or emotions and where they are in my body. I say something like, hello, shame. I recognize and honor your power. I feel you are trying to help and appreciate you in my life. That's a powerful message.
Yeah, it's a really healthy, I mean, that is a really healthy way of taking a look at what's going on. We're practicing some mindfulness skills here. We did the exercise with the shadow of shame where we hear what it looks like and we know what it looks like, so we can recognize, oh, there you are. Oh, then I can start to say, you know what? Oh, hi, I see you. I see you. And shame doesn't like to be seen. So even saying that is a strategy. Like, oh, the impotent one, I see you. And the impotence one, like, I don't want you to see me. I'm gonna pull away from that. Like, shame hates having light shining on it. So we call it out. I recognize you. I see you. I see what you're doing. Thank you for trying to help me. Not helping. I'm going to find something that actually is helpful. And in the process of doing that, we are telling ourselves, we are rewriting those negative core beliefs, and it's powerful. So thanks for that comment. That's beautiful.
For me, the one that comes up in the judge is like, I'll do something and I'll go, oh, you're such an idiot, and I know exactly whose voice that I mean, when you started, I was like, I know exactly where all that comes from, but I've learned to be able to go, gosh, you sound just like somebody else, and and I can transfer it to, that wasn't your finest move. It's not about my worth. It's not that I'm, less than or whatever. It's just like, okay, all things considered, I wouldn't choose to do that again. That wasn't, I could do that better. All of those type of messages, but it takes the shame out of the equation, but it's also a learning. Okay. Next time I will try to, do it differently. But gosh, I was thinking about all of this too. It's like, it takes work and time to get from just absorbing all the shame. And you talked about the addict. I think addicts are running from the shame. The whole point of, I'm going to keep using and doing whatever because I don't want to have to, otherwise I'm going to be in an ocean of shame, and I
Right.
can't even imagine swimming my way out of it. So, to rewrite that and to find a path through it, and to be able to recognize and have some healthy, like was just pointed out, to have some healthy ability to dialogue. I love that you pick up the phone and call somebody. All of those things, all of those are tricks to try to, well, not to try to successfully interrupt the shame cycle.
Yeah. So one of the really powerful strategies that I've learned about the shadows of shame is actually writing down what they say in second person.
Yeah.
So usually when we're writing our journals, usually we're writing in first person, which is I'm feeling this way, or this happened to me, or I had a really bad day, or whatever. Second person is in the genre of, I don't know if you ever read those choose your own adventure books. When I was a kid, I read those choose your own adventure books, and it's like you are walking into a cave and then you have to go either left or right. Which direction do you want to choose? And then you say, I'm going to go left, and you flip over there. That's second person. It's writing in the you, and it's you basically taking dictation from whatever shadow of shame is talking to you. So you spend a few minutes and you write down word for word what the judge or the impotent one or the rebel is saying to you, as if you were in a courtroom and you were taking dictation. So it's going to look something like, you are a horrible person. I can't believe you did that. You suck. You made a mistake. And I write it down. And writing it down in second person gives me the ability then to look at it from a like far away and think, oh, you know what? I can see all kinds of flaws in there now. If I were to write it in first person, it's almost like I have accepted that this is me and this is true. I'm horrible. Yep. But if I write it in second person, I'm able to then say, wow, you know what? I don't think that's entirely true. I think there's some parts in there that maybe are false. Now I can have a dialogue with myself or the shadow and say, look, this part, that that doesn't hold any water. This part here, it doesn't fit. And I can start to speak some truth and shine some light on that. It's a really powerful, simple, but powerful exercise to get an idea of, okay, what are they saying to me right now? What's happening to me?
I could see if I wrote it in first person, I'm deepening the imprint of it, where if I'm in second person, it's the once removed. And I really like that. And even if I can't look at it myself and, see the missed messages in there, going back to, phone a friend, phone a trusted person and say, here's what I just wrote about, here's the situation, here's what I just wrote about it. What do you think? And they also could be the affirming voice of, don't let that one get tattooed on your core beliefs, so
Yeah.
good stuff.
Thank you. The other part of that is the more that I've been able to become familiar with these shadows of shame, when I'm calling a friend or reaching out, I'm like, okay, my judge is like bullying me really badly, or I just agreed with the martyr. I just totally sacrificed, and in doing that, I'm able to step out of the shame of feeling like I'm a bad person. I'm recognizing, oh, one of my defense mechanisms was showing up. It wasn't working very well. And I'm able to have a dialogue. And then it's this tactic that sometimes we use in couples therapy where we pair up against the bad guy. The husband and wife pair up to talk about not even somebody particular, but just how horrible that was, and we find an alliance that way. And we use that same kind of strategy when we're dealing with, oh yeah, that judge, so bad, so so powerful. Yep, I'm right there with you, and I'm like, yeah, and it helps me say, I really am different than you. I am not my shadows of shame. That's you. That's the judges over there. I'm here. I use a psychodrama in my office sometimes where I have the judge sitting on the couch
Oh,
or
wow.
on the chair. Let's talk to him a little bit. Um, Sometimes when they're like, I just am done with you, I like tell him to go away. Just send him out of the room for a while. Just kick him out. I've had clients say, I don't want my judge. I'm like, well, just have your judge stay here with me. When you leave, you can go home, get in your car, drive away. Your judge can hang out with me for the weekend. I'll entertain him or I'll entertain her. So there's a lot of things that we can do to play with those shadows and help us develop more power over them.
Yeah, and I think honestly, just having the ability to recognize it, is so powerful. And like you said, the shadows of shame that it does not want to come to the light. So, and I've said on webinars before, but this is the worst place for things to be. Like if something's trapped in here, I'm in trouble. As soon as I write it down, vent it out to somebody, if I if I bring it into the light and get feedback on it, it changes the perspective. Half the time while I'm saying something to somebody, I'm starting to, to figure it all out. But, but in here, it's like, oh my gosh, so yeah, the judge is big in there. The martyr, like when you were talking about the martyr, and I get so annoyed with myself now, like I can't even be resentful of the situation. I get annoyed with myself that I let myself be, put in that, because I was like, this happened, I was like, I had my schedule. In fact, I was going to go to my 12-step meeting. I had it planned, and then meetings kept getting shoved back. And guess who didn't get to go to her meeting?
Right.
And I was like, but you know what? I really could have, I could have chosen differently. But in the moment, I'm partly because I'm not at my 12-step meeting. I'm resentful of, whatever else, but I was like, like, I don't need to be a martyr about this. I need to choose and hold that boundary more carefully and not let everything else encroach into my, specified time. Then I don't have to be a martyr. Then I'm holding my boundaries, so, and then I'm annoyed with me because I let, it's just,
Yeah.
which is why a 12-step meeting is a really good place to go. So
Absolutely.
yes. So yeah, I was going to ask you about the slides. So yeah, either if you post them on your website or if you do that. But and this is being recorded, so if you'd like to, because when you look at the slides, that's all helpful. But when Troy's talking about it, you get more than just what is on there. So hopefully, if you've got pieces that you want to go back and review, it will be posted probably by tomorrow. It'll be posted on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And while we're waiting for questions, please, if you've got questions or comments, please, do include those. But I want to tell you about some other opportunities. We've got more of the series on Wednesday morning, so, keep coming back. But we've added an old lady posse drop-in group, and that's going really well. But there was some women, and they wanted it called this, but of a certain age, that for people that not only for support but for accountability. I'm working on creating one for women to just learn how to make healthy connections, and it's not about dating, but it's about how do you make a friendship, if you've been isolated or you just don't have that skill. And so that one's going to be coming out. We've got drop-in groups for men. You do a great one on Friday morning. Yeah. So there's just a number of resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. I hope you'll continue to connect with those. And, Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, I don't think there's a better treatment program for men who are experiencing sex addiction, intimacy disorders, or co-occurring sex addiction and chemical dependency. So on seekingintegrity.com, you'll find information about that. There's also a couples workshop that's offered once a month with Paul Hartman. There's a men's 3-day workshop, and we just are going to have, starting in January, a men's 3-day workshop for those men who are struggling with co-occurring sex addiction, chemical dependency, particularly if they've had some recovery and it's kind of a relapse cycle. So just to kind of interrupt that relapse cycle, Dr. David Fawcett will be facilitating that one. So lots of resources. Everything on sexandrelationshiphealing.com is free. Treatment is obviously a paid-for thing, but the best money ever spent, for me, was on getting the help I needed so that I could I could live differently, and I didn't have to live in all those shadows, and didn't have to continue down the secretive path and the lying and the shame and everything else. So in fact, I think it was last year that I calculated the cost of my treatment over the years I've had of recovery, and I was like, well, that was a really good value. So
good.
And the longer I stay in recovery, the cheaper per day it gets. So it's kind of funny.
That's awesome.
Any other questions or comments? So I think in November, yours will, I think I looked and it's like the day before Thanksgiving or something like that. So,
okay.
So I'm willing, if you are.
I'll be here.
I'll be in Minnesota. So
that's
I'll be, well, it'll be with kids and grandkids, and so that's all good. But
nice.
Yes, it'll be cold. I'll be bundled up. So I'll be inside, but I'll be bundled up. So
okay.
So
I'll be here. Yes, I will be there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any we hope to see you next time. We appreciate you being here, and have a good rest of your day.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.